Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light to guide my way.
Symbolism in prophecy presents a bit of a problem in accurate Bible interpretation. The problem isn't really created by the use of symbols in prophecies, but by the opportunities presented to the human mind. It becomes an opportunity to let the mind go where God may not have intended for it to go. Far too often, symbols are taken to mean what an interpreter needs for them to mean. This creates the illusion of proving a false doctrine. And please notice that I emphasize the word illusion. In other words, the proof isn't really there, but the person seeing the illusion will believe it with all his or her heart. This can happen in a couple of ways, which we'll lay out as we continue our study of the language of prophecy. I suspect that symbolism in prophecy has created more speculation than any other, and possibly more than all other figures of speech combined. The reason is simple. When symbols are used to convey thought, they can graphically carry the mind to more places than other texts that are taken out of context. And taking symbolism out of context is precisely the problem. It's not that we have a different problem than not recognizing a metaphor, for example. It's that the word pictures can present so many irresistible possibilities to a false teacher who's willing to adjust the context to get what he wants. Use of the word city, for example, may be referring to a specific geographic location. This is true of Isaiah 1 and verse 21. Here Isaiah said, "How the faithful city has become a harlot, she who was full of justice. Righteousness once lodged in her, but now murderers." If an interpreter wanted to prove a point about modern evils, that word city might end up being applied to Washington, Los Angeles, Paris, London, New Orleans. Sometimes it might simply be what the interpreter knows is going to resonate with his audience. New Orleans and Las Vegas get a lot of that. But those cities aren't in the Bible. So back to Isaiah 1 and verse 21. How do I know which city this refers to? I look at the context. Isaiah is primarily addressed to the southern kingdom of Judah, so we might readily assume this is Jerusalem. But I don't want to assume, so I read further in verses 25 and 27, "I will also turn my hand against you, and will smelt away your dross as with lye, and will remove all your alloy. Then I will restore your judges as at the first, and your counselors as at the beginning. After that you will be called the city of righteousness, a faithful city. Zion will be redeemed with justice, and her repentant ones with righteousness." Zion is Jerusalem. So the city in verse 21 is Jerusalem, and God is rebuking her corruption and describing what he will do to punish and restore her. A city might also be representative of humanity in general. This is a symbolic use of the city concept. Why would God do this? Well, there may be any number of advantages of his doing this. Perhaps the most obvious is that it compacts the whole issue down to something the people could really wrap their minds around. You can lay siege to a city, but how do you lay siege to the world? Well, God can, but we can't see that. The city presents a visual. Another reason which is related is the sense of community, unity, or togetherness. This doesn't come across so clearly with the world, but when you describe a city, they're walled up together, marketing together, worshiping together, governing together. And if the aim of the prophecy is the wickedness of that city, which represents the world, it more readily conveys the evil permeating the whole fabric of society in general. Another reason is that a city allows for more personal descriptions of daily life. And I believe this is the clear intention of Isaiah 24:10. The city of chaos is broken down. Every house is shut up so that none may enter. Now, what makes me think this is more than just a certain specific city? Well, look at the progression of thought. We begin in verse 3, and here we read that he lays the earth waste, and the earth will be completely despoiled. Verse 4, the earth mourns and withers, the world fades, people of the earth fade away. Verse 5, earth is also polluted by its inhabitants. Verse 6, a curse devours the earth, inhabitants of the earth are burned. And what am I to conclude about who is broken down when I come to verse 10? As I've pointed out a number of times in this study, context is king. Never forget that symbolism in Scripture is not a problem if we honor the original intention. Now, there are times when that original intention is not understood until the fulfillment, and we'll get to that further on in our studies. So we have to honor the fulfillment that God places on a prophecy, but we always have to look at the context. It rarely gets confusing unless people step in and contort the visual to try and make it appear the way they want it to. If we're not careful, we can actually do this to ourselves. Well, time's up. I hope you'll join me for our next study, which will continue a discussion of the grand poetic language of prophecy.